Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. You are listening to ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, and today's episode is extremely special to me. I call her, so to speak, one of my secret weapons to success that drastically transformed my life from the inside out, literally. So you're going to hear some of my story and get to hear some amazing best practices that she teaches. So we have on Leanne Oaten. She is a holistic counselor. She specializes in helping women recover from burnout and manage just major life stressors and day-to-day stressors that end up wreaking havoc on your body, your mind, and your soul. Welcome, Leanne.
Oh, thank you, Tiffany. That was such a heartwarming introduction because I certainly, I don't see myself in that way. I just see myself as someone that just, wants to help women. And sometimes I don't realize the impact until it's shared with me. So that means a lot.
That's so true. It's like, oh, we do all this and it actually helps people.
For the long haul, like not just for like a month.
Right. And so I want you guys to know like a little of my story, and then we'll go into, what Leanne did and the work that she did with me, one-on-one and in a group setting. I went through her whole thing, guys. I did the free. She has a really cool, like a free 5-day challenge, so to speak, a reset. I went through the whole thing. So you guys are going to hear all about it. But I mean, I am a recovered workaholic, and I don't mean that in a tongue-in-cheek manner. I'm talking excessive work, excessive exercise. And then at a certain point in my life, I literally was couch-bound and I couldn't move. So Leanne, can you share with people what these signs of burnout and or the, more technical term adrenal fatigue look like and feel like?
Sure. So the list can actually be really, really long, especially in the later stages, as you know. But in the very beginning, some of the warning signs are just feeling more tired, low energy than usual, and it starts to continue on throughout the day. A lot of times what will happen is that there's morning fatigue present. So it's waking up in the morning after you think you slept well, but you feel that hungover kind of brain fog feeling. So those are kind of the first things that start to happen is fatigue. The next thing that can start to show up is mood imbalances. I don't like to say mental health disorders or anything like that, but things like anxiety, feeling revved up, on edge, not able to actually unwind and settle down, depression and low mood. Those are some things that can show up cognitively, where a woman can be diagnosed with depression and anxiety and given a pill. Another big thing, especially for women, is there can start to become cyclic changes in menstruation. So irregular periods, really, really heavy periods, painful periods. And then those kinds of problems can spill over into other things, because when our hormones are all out of whack, what I see often is a woman has either missing periods from all the things that maybe she's tried, or dieting, or who knows, stress even. The other spectrum is heavy periods that then lead to low ferritin, which is low iron, and then she becomes anemic. So then there's this whole picture of exhaustion that is compounded by these other factors. And then that can really just perpetuate feeling depression because you feel like crap and you don't know what to do. So those are sort of some beginning signs that I've seen in my practice as a counselor, where I have been able to help women see, like, no, you're not mentally ill. Like, let's look at what's going on underneath all of this at the root cause.
And would you say, and I know some of this because you shared it with me, but would you say there is a certain personality type that tends to end up in a burnout situation?
Definitely something that I've been seeing as a pattern, especially because it's certain women that are drawn to me that are very much like me, which is how it goes. So it's very much, for lack of a better way to explain it, just that type A, go getter, die hard, keep going, push through, perfectionistic women who are very driven and high functioning, and sometimes on the other end over functioning. So over functioning for people in their lives that are not functioning at their level, and they feel, there's that codependent side where they're feeling like they need to take care of everything and everyone and make sure everybody's happy and people pleasing. So you can see how those kind of patterns lifelong can run us into the ground.
Yeah, because for me and a lot of, people who are in the group too with me, we carried on this way for decades in our life. And then all of a sudden we were basically like almost flatlined. It's like, well, why can't I keep going like I used to go? Well, I don't know. Tell us, Leanne, why doesn't it's like, it seemed almost like, well, just 1 year ago, I was doing all the things. I was working my ass off. I was working out twice a day. I was helping my friend with this. I was doing this, that, the other. And now I can barely even shower. It's like, what the hell happens?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, because we can only run on adrenaline for so long. And that's generally how women in this category, I need to come up with like a really powerful, beautiful name for it so it doesn't sound bad because it's a positive. These are positive traits to have, but they've gone into the extreme to the point where they are now counterproductive and our body is screaming at us. So it's really about being able to know when you have been overdoing it. And we can only go on like that for so long, right? We find our coping mechanisms. We use extra coffee. Like you said, you use exercise, and there's things that you use that eventually stop working. Just like with any addiction, if it's addiction to busy, work, drugs, or alcohol, it's similar kind of in that the way that we go about things eventually stops working, because when we are in this pattern of perpetual doing, it a lot of times is to cover up and avoid something that we don't necessarily want to stop and look at, whether it's within ourselves or something that's going on in our life. So eventually the body will say no, and you will hit that proverbial wall. And that's generally where there's that breakdown of like, okay, I need help. That's where women end up coming to see me.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be wonderful, my goal of this episode and being open about, having adrenal fatigue, and we'll get into what that means. I say the term burnout because a lot of people kind of glaze over when I say adrenal fatigue, but if I can even help one person or a couple people get help before you're almost flatlined like I was, that'd be great. But I wouldn't have listened either. So I also understand that most people who end up getting help from Leanne are already, pretty much like flatlined. What I mean by that is like you're the walking dead. You can barely get off the couch because we wouldn't
Yeah,
have listened
exactly.
sooner, right?
Yeah, there's that, because there's some of us that need that major wake up call. Like some people, it's, heaven forbid, cancer or something, more terminal. I always thanked the universe for just giving me burnout, like it's something that can be reversed. It's something that takes looking inside. It's something that takes changing your lifestyle, your thoughts, your beliefs, your behaviors, your emotions. All of that stuff is really part of reversing it.
So can you help educate all of us on what is adrenal fatigue? Like what are your adrenals? Like what is this whole burnout, this hashtag burnout thing really look like from, I guess you could say, a health scientific perspective?
So it's basically, if I was going to try and explain it in, terms that you can understand without getting too, because I glaze over when I start listening to too much of the clinical, but really another name for it, if somebody wanted to Google it, it would be the HP axis dysregulation, right? It's like the, HPA, I think it's called axis. So it's basically where the idea behind it, and there is some now people, experts saying that this doesn't actually exist, adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. I don't really care about that, because I know that there's enough women out there suffering with this that when we start looking at the roots of it, they start feeling better, right? So basically the idea of this, as it's explained by all of the experts I've ever, followed, is that it's when we are running on adrenaline for so long, our adrenals have to pump out all this cortisol each time we get stressed. We are pumping out cortisol, right? So when we are just having that happen intermittently, then our body can return to calm and go back to feeling, homeostasis, calm, center kind of thing. But if a woman is like we are describing here, just the go, 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 doesn't know how to rest, doesn't know how to relax, constantly anxious, on edge, just revved up all the time. Maybe she has emotional stress. Maybe she's in a stressful relationship dynamic with her partner or other members of her family. Could be work related, business related. If she doesn't have the ability to calm down and really master her life in other areas, then eventually that continual cortisol response becomes a cortisol drip that is just happening all the time. It's almost like being in fight or flight all the time, rather than just when there's a danger, right? Or where there is a real threat to your safety, which is what our stress response is. So eventually our adrenals are said to just get tired, and then they cannot do it anymore, and they become fatigued, which I guess is where adrenal fatigue comes from, right? And so what can happen is someone goes from that high cortisol level when they're just at the beginning stages, where they're really just so much cortisol pumping through their body, to the low cortisol realm, is which where I got to, and that's where your health really starts to go down the drain. Because I actually had a low cortisol response because it was so high for so long. And this is where a lot of the really big issues start to come up for women, like the depression and the weight gain and the feeling really anxious and a lot of exhaustion. And that's where their life really starts to unravel, because it's gone from the very beginning, stage 1, into stage 3, maybe starting into stage 4.
That was a great explanation. So you guys know, my story is very similar to Leanne's, in that mine was high for so long from having an abusive childhood, then how I led my life, hard charging, type A, super achiever, took care of everyone, excessive working out, too much coffee, too much caffeine. And then I had those symptoms. Those were even somewhat manageable, right? Because high cortisol can almost seem like a high, because think of cortisol as like the stress hormone. So it's almost like I was on fire, right? I might have, some of the symptoms were I could gloss over, right? I was always excessively hot, things like that. But it's when my body goes, well, you've produced so much cortisol, so much excess cortisol so long, we don't need to produce anymore. That's when you can actually die from it. If you don't have cortisol, you will die, right?
Yeah. If you go into the full-blown like adrenal crash, it's rare, but it can happen. Yes. If you don't heed the signals and deal with it, if you go into later stage 4, there is, I can't remember what it's called, but it is where your adrenal system literally shuts down. And yes, you can die. That's in a medical emergency event. You need to go to the hospital if that ever happens, right? Where you suddenly just have like a stabbing pain in your adrenals, or, you collapse kind of thing. But again, that's rare, but it is common for women to be walking around with all these other issues that are related to their adrenal function, because it's really the home base of our entire health system, because it controls so much. And when a woman has been in this low cortisol for a long enough period of time, then she starts to end up with low progesterone symptoms and estrogen dominant symptoms, which it's not really sometimes estrogen dominance, it's just low progesterone, because the adrenals are stealing the progesterone, if you can imagine, to convert to cortisol. Because it's like, we need cortisol to live. Like, we need it, right? So it's like, well, the progesterone isn't life or death, so let's steal. It's called the progesterone steal. where if you can just imagine, they're so tired and they're just like us trying to get coffee because we're so tired to convert it to energy. Our adrenals are trying to take our progesterone to make into cortisol to keep us alive.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually kind of, if you like slow down, which I know is a hard for a lot of us, you can actually feel in your system. You can, if you get really in touch with yourself and do, work like I've done with Leanne, you can actually feel your system starting to pull those reserves. Adrenal in your throat gets tight, your eyes, you start blinking more, you can start sweating, right? And it's like someone cuts you off in traffic, surge of adrenaline, you
Yeah.
know? And when you don't have cortisol, it's going to tap into those, pull from those other hormones to get that spike. And now your whole system's fucked.
Yep. That's a very good way to put it. Because, yeah, and that's where, I mean, it's sad. Like, it really breaks my heart. I mean, I'm so happy that I can help women to, reclaim their life again, but it's really hard sometimes to see what women do to themselves and how hard we are on ourselves. And this isn't just about work, work, work. It's how are we beating the shit out of ourselves internally all day long. From the moment we wake up, we're beating ourselves up for what we see in the mirror, for how we're not good enough. We're comparing ourselves. We're obsessing over diet, exercise, nutrition, external, how people see us externally, perfectionism, people pleasing, trying to be everything to everyone. No wonder we're basically like running away from ourselves, and then we hit that wall. I always just envision it's literally like that, running, and then boom, you hit the wall, you're out flat, because your body can only do that for so long. And then eventually it will say, no, no more. And then that's where, we're in that desperate state.
Yeah, and I want to share so you guys know some of the signs for me. What do they say? Hindsight's 2020. But some of the signs for me, I was chasing the symptoms, right? Because in most conventional medicine, certain things aren't as recognized, especially when we start talking about hormones. So you end up chasing the symptoms. So for me, I had, when my cortisol was high, I had really bad adult acne. So what did I chase that with? Went to top dermatologist and got put on Accutane. Very, very potent medication. So I just chased that symptom. My hair actually started falling out. Well, I chased that symptom. I got extensions. So there I chased that symptom. Then I was getting sick all the time. I'm not exaggerating. I caught everything under the sun. And I would say every 5 to 6 weeks, I had a full blown sinus infection, like needing antibiotics, needing, prescription nasal sprays, the whole deal, like to the point where it was like, I couldn't just kind of go, isn't that weird? I catch everything. And I just kept showing up at the doctor and they're like, oh, well, your immune system must be low. I mean, so do you see, was I like unique in that, Leanne, or do you see, is that common? Some of that stuff I just described.
Super, super common, because that's the other thing with adrenal issues is when we are under stress, as you've probably heard, Tiffany, that stress is linked to 99% of the reasons we go to the doctor. It's linked to 99% of the health issues we experience, at least on some degree. And so eventually what stress does is it depletes our immune system. And this is all part of the adrenal picture, right? Stress, inflammation, gut issues, different things that start to go on as part of the adrenal fatigue, or might be a part of it, like part of why it started. There's so many different factors, but this low immunity, and this was my case as well. Like now, as you can probably tell, I have a bit of a cold. I'm getting over it, but I literally had just a touch of it for a couple of days, and then my body fought it off, and I'm good as new. When I was really sick, I was just like you, and I had little kids at the time bringing things home all the time. I was always sick, and I had those sinus infections. I remember the first time I had got a sinus infection as a result of a cold I had. I thought I was dying. I was so sick. I didn't know what was happening because I'd never experienced a sinus infection before. Then I started getting asthmatic symptoms out of the blue. Never had been an asthma person, but just respiratory wheezing and attacks after exercise and things like that, coughing attacks. I mean, yeah, like your body starts speaking to you. It's saying, hello, pay attention. And so, yeah, maybe you take echinacea, or you take some supplements, or like you said, your hair's falling out in clumps, so you go find some kind of shampoo that's for hair thickening, or yeah, that's what we generally do.
Yeah.
Is we're looking for like a quick fix to just go, oh, okay, I'll just find some anti-acne treatment, or I'll buy some antacids for my digestion, rather than looking at, well, why is my digestion such a mess? You know?
Yeah. So for people who are listening, or whether and guys can get this too, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
Leanne, her main focus is working with women. So that's what we're focusing on, and it's more common in women, but this can happen to men too, right, Leanne?
Definitely, for sure. The thing with that is that with men, from my understanding, is that it will show up more in just like maybe they get more depressed, less motivated to do things. Their immune system can go take a nosedive. They can start experiencing stress-related immunity issues, sinus issues, headaches. So it does present differently because they don't have the same hormonal cascade going on that we do as women. This really sensitive hormonal system that can get knocked off balance like crazy. So it does show up differently, but certainly it is possible.
So if you guys are relating to these symptoms, I mean, I'm telling you how I felt the most validated. And when I say I was in the depths of despair, I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, my depression was so severe from this that I didn't want to live anymore. And I'm not saying that lightly at all. I didn't, because I had no quality of life. I had took everything in me to keep my primary company that funds ProjectME, keep that going. Thank God I had people who worked for me who I could be transparent with. But barely. I mean, I had a hard time taking a shower. I couldn't even go to the grocery store anymore. I could sleep 12 hours and wake up feeling like I never slept. So if any of this is like resonating with you, or whatever degree, you don't have to be at the degree I was at or that Leanne was at. Leanne, what would you say would be a good next step for people who are hearing this and saying, "Uh-oh, this sounds like me"?
So, first and foremost is to really, this is what I have women do, especially in that 5-day challenge, for instance. It's like an introduction to the 5 dimensions of the common factors of adrenal fatigue, but is to really take stock as to like what is like really dialing down the stressors, right? So, for me and you, and pretty much every woman that eventually comes to see me, they're already on a naturopathic protocol, they're on strict diets, they're on supplements, they're doing all those things, taking adrenal supplements. And as you know, remember one of the ladies in our group with her big Ziploc bag of supplements she finally threw away.
Yeah.
Like that's the typical picture, and yet they're not getting better. And so what I would say to you is, yes, those are all wonderful things. Thank goodness these natural medicines exist and naturopaths exist. Definitely get care on that end, but do not overlook emotional stress. The internal stuff, like we've talked about here, what's going on internally, what's going on in your marriage, your relationship, what's going on in your work life, what is your whole picture of your life actually looking like? Because the patterning is one thing, but we also have to look at our relationships, as you know, right? So if you are already doing something with a naturopath and you've got that going on, great, but just don't neglect this other side of your emotional, psychological, emotional stress side of it, because it's huge. You could eat the most organic diet, all the salads, smoothies, supplements, all this stuff. But if you have this stuff going on the side, these patternings that we've talked about here, Tiffany's shared, it's going to have little to no effect. It's just, you may as well be flushing your supplements down the toilet because your body is just eating them all up. For instance, if you have, this is what happened with me anyways, is low progesterone that was causing a lot of issues. So I was taking these really expensive bioidentical creams that were like $100 for like a month of this cream. And I was putting this stuff on like body lotion and it was doing nothing. And so what was explained to me is that because of the stressors that were not being dealt with in my life, my body was just eating up the progesterone. So it was like throwing it down the toilet. It wasn't doing anything. I had to start looking at these other aspects of myself. Like you said, Tiffany, the emotional self-healing, the trauma, the past, really looking at all of it and how it was impacting my now. That was the work that really started to move the needle forward. So if I would just, round this up, it would be to say, yes, get naturopathic functional medicine care, but also work on your emotional health, find a really good therapist or someone you can go to that has the skills and the expertise to guide that process for you.
And it has to be somebody who's on the level of expertise in this specific area, like Leanne is, on adrenal fatigue, AKA burnout, not just anyone, because it is a nuance. I've had a therapy my entire life. Like, I'm a big proponent of therapy, but my therapist wasn't equipped to deal with this. This is like a mind, body, soul issue. So no amount of therapy was going to fix this. I even was on prescription cortisol to replace my cortisol. Did it help a little bit? Yes, but a little bit when you're basically flatlined isn't much. I mean, I would say I gained 30 to 35 pounds in 3 months. And I'm not kidding you. And I cut out all sugar. I was tripping. My body, I had no control over my body. It was pure insanity. So you need to be with somebody and work with somebody who really gets this, preferably someone who's been through it.
Oh, freaking absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like when I was really not doing well with this, there wasn't anybody out there. There wasn't as much information as there is now back then. I had to figure it out myself. So yeah, having somebody that has the training, as background in counseling psychology and applied counseling psychology is my background. So I am trained in that, but I have personal experience and I could write books on the subject because I spent, my school was learning how to heal myself, right? So yeah, really find somebody that you can connect with that understands burnout, understands emotional stress, that has that, even a specialty. You can ask, do you have a specialty in like emotionally focused therapy? Because I need to work on that aspect, and being able to connect past events with present triggers. These are the things that we need to work on. And no, not all therapists are skilled in this area.
One of the biggest things that I learned from Leanne that I really never realized I was doing was I was overachieving for underachievers,
Mm-hmm.
or overdoing for people who were underdoing.
Yep.
That includes, my fiance, that can also include family, friends, employees, coworkers.
Yep.
Because just because you can, that doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
and that's so true. Like that was a lot of your work, was looking at the hard stuff, right? Like anybody can take a supplement. The other thing that came through here as you were just sharing all this about the sudden weight gain and stuff, the other thing I help women with is this body image disordered eating stuff that can be going on underneath. Because if you have something like that going on and suddenly you feel like, oh my God, I'm not in control anymore, what I'm doing isn't working, that can trigger some really funky stuff going on around body image and self-esteem.
Oh my God. I lost my shit, you guys.
Yeah.
I lost it. I mean, I am someone who takes exercise to an addiction level. So I manage that. I'm so much better today. But I mean, I was trying to like out exercise a diet. Like I was just insane. But when I look back, it was really, I was getting like, it was a high, like any addiction, right? Because when you exercise, especially excessively or very hardcore, it releases cortisol and will release adrenaline, which is a lot of people go, oh, it's a runner's high. It's hormones, just FYI.
That's an amazing point too. I didn't even touch on that, is the whole exercise piece of over exercising and adrenal fatigue is huge. Do you know how many women I've spoken with on social media or that I end up talking to that are burned out, beyond burned out. I have a client right now, and like I'm trying to get her off of CrossFit because that's her
Uh,
high. That's her thing, right?
uh,
I'm like, I know you love it. I'm not going to make you do anything, but I'm just letting you know that this is probably not the best thing right now. Runners, people who run marathons and things like that are very much known to get severe adrenal fatigue. Also bodybuilders, people that get in and out, in and out, in and out of body competitions, that is highly stressful on the body. Our body is not designed to go into starvation mode and then like restrict, dehydrate so that you can get some kind of a size going on. And then you go right back to like whatever later. That yo-yo stuff is like yo-yo dieting. It's the same pattern we put our body through. I've spoken to women who have permanently messed up their whole endocrine system by bodybuilding and overexercising.
oh, and I'm one of them. I mean, I'm still, you guys, on an array of combined prescription and supplements that I actually have to sustain life. And it's because of I won't go into all the reasons. There's a lot of reasons, but one of them was extreme over exercising in my life. And like Leanne was saying, it was like I wasn't doing competitions, but there was a lot of the yo-yoing, yo-yo dieting, yo-yo exercising going on, and my whole system got really, really warped from doing that. I mean, that's a lot of stress.
Yeah. I mean, we have to have some compassion for our poor bodies that we put all this stress on, and somehow it keeps going. And so part of the healing process is being able to go, I am so sorry I have done this to you, body. It's time for me to now love you, nurture you, give you rest, give you nourishment on all levels because I've abused you for so long. It's the effect of, if we could really look at all these things we're talking about, it's almost like a self-abuse, right? We're not giving ourselves the gift of rest, pleasure, nourishment, quiet time, solitude, saying no to stuff we don't want to do, setting boundaries. Like you said, not picking up the slack for other people. Women that are taking on the slack at home, at work, no. If you get to a place where it's like, no more, so looking at your whole life, what are you putting up with? What are you tolerating that is absolutely intolerable? That's what we need to look at to heal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, without doing all of that work, even though I am an incredibly compliant patient and I'm very good about diet and supplements, and I even, have gotten a million times better with the exercising thing and only doing movement that my body truly wants and can handle, that still wouldn't be enough without doing all of the other work that Leanne's been talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the supplements and all that is just, it's like a support. It will help your body, but you need to give it the gas. And the gas is rest, self-care, self-respect, setting boundaries, self-honor, valuing yourself, and not, I say leaking and splattering your energy all over the place in a million different directions. So there's nothing left for you. It's really about becoming masterful about where we give our energy and attention to, and to make sure we're giving most of it toward ourselves instead of everyone else. Because most women that are in this pattern have that codependent nature to want to be everything and do everything for anyone. They'll drop anything to go help someone else, even if it totally screws them and their life up, messes their day up, puts a major inconvenience on them and their time. That's what I see so many times over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah. For, entrepreneurs, boss babes, people who are working on a side hustle or are really, really engaged in growing their career. What I hear a lot from clients that I work with on my end as a business coach is I end up hearing them all the symptoms of extreme overwhelm and burnout after maybe they do a product launch or, a big promotion, a big kind of promotional event, or when they return from a business trip, they're a mess.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for maybe they're not, so far down the road where they have adrenal fatigue, but they're experiencing this like high and crash
Oh my
during
gosh.
their professional life?
We could do a whole episode just on this, how to not burn out in your business, because I definitely had a relapse in mine when I moved online just over 2 years ago. I had a local practice, which, a little bit of a different scale than when you're moving online, reaching a global audience, putting all the systems, technology, you know how all that works. It's a lot of work. And so for me, I just started to try and do everything all at once. I took a business coaching program online. That was my first experience with that. I was implementing all the things this coach had us doing. I was overwhelmed. I was so stressed out and strung out because I was trying to do all the things all at once. So if I was going to give advice to someone who's maybe just starting out or they're in that first year, get focused. Do not do everything all at once. Do not do YouTube, podcasts, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all the things all at once, because you will burn out and you will not do any of it well. It will all just be done half-assed because there's no way you can master 20 things, right? So my advice around that is to make sure that you are taking care of your personal energy. How you take care of yourself matters more about growing your business than the things you do strategically. Your energy is everything. And so really mastering that, because how can a burned out, tapped out coach of any kind help someone else when they themselves are not helping themselves? So you need to take care of yourself first. So that would be my first tip. The second thing is what I've had to master, because I'm such a doer, achiever, give me a list, I'll get it done kind of person, is really staying focused and finishing things to completion. So for instance, focusing on one project, like right now, my monthly membership program. I put some energy into that. So I put the energy into that, and then I will shift into something new instead of, not new, but just like shifting my focus where I'm putting my energy. So I'm not putting it into 5 different promotions or 5 different services or products. Do you know what I mean? So if you're splattering your energy in so many different places, none of it's effective, and you will burn out because you will see you're not getting anywhere because of that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, whether you're online or you have a brick and mortar business or you're an employee, all of that for sure applies. And, something that my therapist likes to say to me, which I believe it's through her, the universe is reminding me through her. She'll go, Tiffany, who's chasing you?
Mm-hmm.
Like meaning, what's the race? I'm like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do this now and I have to get this done by then. It's like, well, who's chasing you? Like,
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because a really important mentor of mine along the path had always said that to me in a different form. She said, nothing is ever that urgent. She said, unless somebody's dying or your house is on fire, like nothing is really that urgent. And this just goes back to that personality trait of the woman that just I have a hard time even still to this day, just doing nothing or telling myself, today for my business, I'm going to do these 3 things. And then I'm going to just chill and enjoy my day and go do some things for myself, because there's a part of my brain that's like, you should be working every waking minute that your kids are not here and they're at school.
yeah.
Right? To be able to just say, like, I did the things that I needed to do today. And we need to be able to be okay with that, because we're never going to get it all done. The list keeps growing. So we need to be able to allow ourselves to have that success of, I got these 3 to 5 things done today. That's a successful day.
That's really great advice. I clearly needed to hear that today.
I
was like,
oh. Like, I do not want to see you again because you burned out.
and that's the responsibility that's on me, right? You can hire an amazing coach, counselor, therapist, but the other, so to speak, 23 hours of the day are on me to manage and implement and check in with myself and my energy.
That is a very good point, because you might have days where your energy's on fire and you can get more done. Base it on, if we're speaking to women, basing it on your cycle, because before and after, there's a little bit less energy. That's actually how it's designed. We're designed to need to go with it and rest during that time of the month. But a lot of these alpha women characters, we are like nope, I just blaze through. I pretend I don't have a cycle or any other needs or that my energy ebbs and flows. So we fight against those rhythms. And so that's a really good point of tapping into your body, because self-awareness is huge in this whole thing.
How can people get access to this free 5-day adrenal reset with you?
So I always have, depending on when they're listening, because this could be something you're listening to like maybe a year down the road and I might not have the same offer. I always have my whatever freebie offer on my website at leanneoaten.com. So you can always go there and check anytime. But right now I have the 5-day free challenge. It's a 5-day video series that I'm taking you through 5 dimensions of recovery and giving you action steps that you can take each day to get the ball moving and get some momentum going. And you can find that at leanneoaten.com/adrenal kickstart.
And you guys can follow Leanne on Instagram at leanne.oaten. And that is where I actually found her. You know, it's the power and the beauty of social media. I was so desperate to connect and feel less alone. You know, like most of us, I started Googling my symptoms, and I'm really damn good at Googling. So eventually adrenal fatigue did pop up. And I read, you know, everything I could possibly read. And I was like, I clearly have this. So then I went on Instagram, and, you know, this is why hashtags are a great thing. It's not just something to annoy people. And I typed in adrenal fatigue, and that's how I found Leanne. And it made me feel so much less alone to know that, you know, there were other people who had this, so much so that it was worthy of Leanne creating an entire business around it.
It's so common. It is. I think almost every woman is probably walking around with some degree of this, to be honest with you. And it's so massive, and it will destroy your entire life. So it's not something to just leave and go, oh, I just need to get more sleep. Like, you got to really look at it. That's part of it. It's interesting you say that, because like 95% of women that find me on Instagram. So who knows what that's about.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is I did start with her 5-day challenge. But if you already know, like, listen, I'm at a point where I need to like get right to it. Like, I can't waste another day. I would strongly advise, like, if I could go back in time, I would have gone straight to working with her one-on-one, or in one of her, you know, organized group formats, to where you get to the root much faster and you start that work much faster. I would have made that investment sooner. I'm not saying I have regrets, but I'm just saying you can't get back days of your life. So
no. And then there's a process that sometimes happens through this, is that grieving of like the things that you did miss out on and the things that you did have to say no to, maybe the things you've put up with. And so that's why having somebody that can help you move through that process. So I do have right now options just for strategy sessions. If a woman is just like, I just need you to tell me what to do, what I'm missing, what are the missing pieces, give me a list of things I need to put into my life, and I will do it. But then I also have like my 3-month deep immersion, which is more of the therapy, because if we're going to do therapy, it needs to be a long-term commitment. So I do work on those 2 levels, as well as my monthly group coaching program. So it's just dependent on a woman's needs. What she feels like she needs at the time is basically how I have structured all of that.
Well, Leanne, thank you so much for everything you've done for me and everything that, you know, you do for other women who are in pain and lost and are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
And thank you so much for having me on your beautiful show. Thank you. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.